Hey, good evening and welcome to my stream. Even though there is so much soccer going on and England made it into extra time, I start the stream nevertheless, even though it is hard to find a spot or slot where you can fit it in. Probably not the longest stream app ever. AJ, nice to see you on the stream. Good evening. Spectre, very nice to see you. Theodorus, great that you are here, guys. Even though CD Radar, hola los amigos, he says. Great to see the four of you on the chat, even though there is soccer going on and stuff. Yeah, Spectre, thank you for asking. Chile is still alive, but you can totally see that it is getting closer to the end every day. She doesn't really want to let go, but it is getting harder and harder for her. So there soon will be a farewell to Chile stream, I guess. Today, though, there is another stream for couplers. The coupler cycle, and I wanted to talk about the Janney coupler, the very ubiquitous coupler in North America that also came to Britain in the form of a Buckeye coupler, more or less. And what is better than to go to a classic American route where I can use another locomotive that I have not used yet, the SD40, without the -2 in the Clinchfield Railroad, and I just wanted to... It is weird, this thing that you always drop out of your selected menu if you try to do something. So there are those sequences in Clinchfield, right, where you can do trips to one of the mines and back again and do some shunting in between, and this is one of them that we are going to do today, I guess. Yeah, I thought about buying some new DLCs, but to be honest, I was a bit disappointed by the big update that they pushed out the other day, called German improvement, and well, they fixed some lighting and some door issues mainly, but not one single signaling and PCB error in Munich or Rapid Transit or anywhere. So this did not really make me enthusiastic. So why not play the old stuff if the new stuff is not more perfect than the old stuff anyway? Spectre says, true, I bought the Baureihe 218 more or less out of frustration over work, and it's quite decent. There is one big bug. It's TSG, right? TSG does decent stuff. Door steering does not work, but apart from that, the door control. So the next bunch of door control problems that they can tackle in future things. Obviously, the fun thing was when it got announced that the Baureihe 218 was released. I went to work, and the first locomotive that drove past me more or less at the station was Baureihe 218, what is not so common anymore, but this was actually one of those rescue locomotives, I think, are sometimes to be found on the tracks. Yeah, well, let's play some shunting, coal hopper shuntings services. We start at Elkhorn City, what is in Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken. And this is one of the funny services where you spawn in your locomotive, and the first thing that happens is that your locomotive is rolling away. So you might want to start with setting up the independent brake to lead or dead, and then apply it. And then you can start finding your way about. Setting up the locomotive. Maybe we can turn on some light. Where is the light switch? There it was. Damn, it's really dark, says AJ. Kentucky, I feel a mullet growing. Can barely see anything. A horror train. Well, I actually did not use the Journey version because there it is raining typically. Well, and this is at night, 4 o'clock. Clear skies though, and some light around the tipple over there. And we are fitted out with a pair of SD40-2 locomotives that we have to set up. Most of it is already set up. Obviously we have to turn on those 3 switches. I always like to have the step lights on. Then we should be the controlling unit, shouldn't we? Controlling with unit coupled at long hood end. And we want some number lights. And then we can turn on the headlights so we get a bit more light, and then there are gauge lights. The funny thing is that I have never been able to find where you can turn on the warning devices, even though it works with the shift return setup. And then we managed to blow the PCS with the first thing that we did. That means put the automatic brake into emergency. Then the cooldown can run while we are going over to the second locomotive to set it up. Here we can actually use our flashlight, then AJ might see a bit more. Cut out, handle off. That looks good. Only thing that we want to do here, controlled, and no number lights on the rear one so that people can see that it is the rear one. And yeah, this is the topic for today. This kind of couplers, type E, Janney couplers, I guess they are. And we will look a bit at that, how they work and what the rest of the world is doing without this kind of couplers. First, let's see where we are supposed to go with our locomotives and set the switches. Over there are some red lights, so we need to be careful whether they are maybe for us, and we're passing the tipple. And over there, and then we might probably reverse back to get some so PCS is extinguished again. And then always an interesting thing, before we can operate this SD40 we have to use the selector lever. And I always set this number to the number of units that we're actually driving, even though I have not been able to verify that this is the correct thing to do. But it seems to work best. Bernie, long time no see. Nice to have you on the stream. Fried chicken smells, as CD Radar, because we are in Kentucky. Elkhorn City, 1965 or something. Is there a level crossing over there? And I don't know about you guys, but I like the design of those old locomotives very much. And sometimes this old DLC looks also quite appealing. In a DTG stream, someone said it does not matter, you could use one as well. It is not the number of locos. It might actually be, if it is as it is in the F7, that is also in this DLC, then it might be the way the transitioning works, and if you set up your driving motors to series parallel or full parallel, full series shunt or something like this. In my impression, it works best if you actually set it to the number of locomotives. And I don't know how I got to the number of units, maybe because there is a switch for the number of units on the F7. At least it works if you do it like this. Theoria says, yeah, home, I'm not a big fan of KFC. And Bernie says they are cool, but I prefer some newer SPUs. They can look so cool. I can see that as well. And I'm always happy that we can have the variety of newer and older locomotives and everything in the game. That is not a level crossing, is it? No, it's just some light on the floor. Elkhorn City has this interesting entry signal when you're coming in from the south, where the upper signal head is missing the green light for some reason. The headlights are supposed to be on. It's the one on top here, between the number lights. The other lights on the hood, Theodorus, I think is the classification light. That we don't need to use unless we are a special train. Here those. They don't have the extra headlights that the Dash 2s on Sampex Great have, for example. We are in quite a steep gradient here already. Yeah, it looks still dark. I have to admit this. But a bit of light the headlights do shed. So, now we drove out of the station using this track here as a shunting head, and now we are supposed to reverse back to pick up our cars. So it would be actually quite nice if someone was at the rear end of the train so that we can see what is happening. What is happening is that we're going to couple. Since we're coupling to cars that are no passenger cars but just simple coal hoppers, we probably do not bother to stop in front of it. As long as the couplers are aligned and one of them is open. Like the I-1010s have them. It's the CD radar. So what happened with my Hank cam? He's supposed to stand here, not sit on the roof. So we're coming in with quite some gradient momentum. AJ says it's actually darker for us than for you. Useful to keep that in mind. If you can barely see something, we can't see it at all. Oh, I see. Well, I actually hoped that it might get bright day, early morning sunrise while we are doing this. The thing is, all those shunting thingies are happening in the night. At least the ones with the SD40s. Otherwise I would have picked one that happens during day. So maybe you can see that we are approaching the hopper cars. At least the glistening wheels can be seen. And even though we probably don't technically need to stop in front of the cars before coupling up, we might do it anyway, so that Hank can step off the locomotive, ask for protection that we grant by applying independent full and maybe putting the reverser to neutral. And then he checks. What does he check? He checks if the couplers are aligned, if one of them is open, and then he gives us a green light that we can couple up. Bernie says, but yeah, I got myself SimRail in the Steam sale. I've been absolutely loving the multiplayer. I just been even more fun if people actually use the voice over IP. I use it when dispatching, but half of the time the neighboring stations don't hear me for some reason. Yeah, that is sometimes a bit of a problem. But you're right, this is a lot of fun. And hello Alex, nice to have you on the stream. So, from what I have seen in the NORAC and the GCOR rules, when coupling up, we have to do this not exceeding a speed of 4 miles per hour. After we made sure so Hank is coming back into the cab after we made sure that the cars are secure so they cannot roll away. And now we are actually supposed to leave Elkhorn City station here and drive all the way over. Where is it? Here, to this spot where is the McClure area and where we do the shunting then. But maybe I just do a little trick and let the game run in the background without doing anything, and it might get day while we hear the presentation in between. So if you don't mind that the engines are roving all the time, I move the camera away so that it gets a bit more silent. And then we can have the presentation at the same time we wait for more light. Let's say for some reason we are detained here and cannot go And let's have the presentation now. Inspector says Hank is a versatile guy. He can do steam, diesel and everything. Yeah. But he actually started his existence as a freight conductor in Canada. So this is more or less his core, his core training that we are using today. And then he also was able to do steam and everything. My presentation for the couplers. Let's just find it somewhere and go to the correct slide before I put it on the... So, presentation. This is a bit of recap. Last time we have talked about couplers. We have not talked about, only talked about the forces, compressive forces, traction forces that they have to deal with, but also what things need to be coupled. This is one, the mechanical side can be for dealing with the compressing forces and the tractive forces, and then there are the brake pipes, sometimes two of them, sometimes in pairs. The pneumatic connection, then we have the power supply, the train line, electric, then we often have some sort of a data transmission for electric use again, like for the old and the newer UIC cable that we also sometimes use for push-pull train operation. And we have talked about that some couplers can actually do all this automatically and some only some of it semi-automatically, if you want it like this. And CD Radar says this reminded me of the definition of speed in our rules when running a train with a trailing power cable. It says slow walking speed. All right. Well, Hank often has a really fast walking speed when you press the shift key and move him about. This icon that I invented more or less can tell us if a buffer is using central buffer. That means we don't actually need the lateral buffers on the side, but we have the buffering here in the drag and draw installation in the middle. You remember, then we don't have the problem with the compressive forces at the sides of the train in curves, what is sometimes a great thing. And then automatic coupling of the mechanical part, automatic coupling of the pneumatic part, so the brakes, automatic coupling of the power supply, automatic coupling of the data coupling, and then automatic uncoupling. That would be the full automatic coupler that can do all those four coupling thingies, and then the uncoupling again. And when we are supposed to look at the Janney coupler, the American coupler, that has a number of names. That's also called according to the various organizations over the years that always proclaimed that their members should use this kind of buffer. The AAR, the Association of American Railroads, and their predecessors that sometimes had some different acronyms. This is why you can find so many different names for it. The Buckeye is a special version with a side-operated thingy, and they are all in some sorts better than the UIC screw link that we use in Europe. That has nothing of that. We don't have a central buffering, and we don't have any kind of automatic things. The cars need to be pressed against each other so that a person can go in and put the chain on the hook and turn the screws to make it tight, and then connect all the cables by hand. And the Janney Buckeye coupler, the American coupler that we're talking about today, they have at least the central buffering, so that we don't have the problem with the side forces, and we don't need to fiddle around with the brake setup of long loco formation and all that stuff that we need in German operating rules, for example. And they can couple up automatically, just as we have seen it in the game here. But the rest Hank needs to do. Hank needs to connect the brake pipe hoses, the pneumatic hoses. On a freight train like here, we don't have any kind of power coupling, and if you want to uncouple it, then Hank has to do that. And then, for example, a full automatic coupling like the Scharfenberg that we have looked at on the ICE 3 and the TGV, for example, they can do all the stuff automatically, and the driver does not need to leave their seat. And now I wanted to have a look worldwide where different couplers are more or less, and this is very rough. So if some of the couplers end up on top of a certain country, then don't quote me on that this country is using those couplers. Just on a very rough scale. We have typically in Europe, Central Europe, without Britain for some parts, we still have the buffers and chain UIC screw-link coupling a lot, especially on freight trains. On passenger trains is a different story. There we have often automatic couplers like the Scharfenberg, but on freight trains we still use the buffers and chain couplers, the UIC screw-link, with no automatic features at all. And in America they are using the Janney AAR American knuckle couplers, have been using them for more than 100 years now, already in the 19th century, and there are so many different types of those couplers that you can make a full length movie about them. There is a video by Heith where he goes across the yard in Ohio and shows the different historical version of the knuckle couplers. I want to focus more or less on contemporary couplers that are still in use and that we also can find in the game. And those knuckle couplers, we have already seen them. They have the central buffering and they can do an automatic coupling. Whereas in the Russian dominated world, we had or still have the Wilson or SA3 coupler. That is also a coupler that does central buffering and can couple up automatically. It is a very jagged type of coupler. It's not roundish like the Janney coupler, but it looks a bit like the part of a halberd, like the blade of a halberd, and those parts fit together. And this is more or less so the three pillars that you have on conventional couplers in those three parts of the world. And in the Janney family and the knuckle coupler variety, the bread and butter coupler that you have on most freight cars is the type E1. That looks more or less like this. We have seen this, we've just used this to couple up our trains, but there are more elaborate versions of the knuckle coupler, the type F, sometimes called the interlock, because it provides for more tight coupling in the coupler itself. The type E coupler still has a lot of play and leeway in its connection where the cars can move against each other. The interlock has a more rigid connection between the couplers, so all the forces between the cars need to be picked up by some springs and other thingies where the couplers actually are connected to the cars. So this is something that you can read is often used on hazmat cars to reduce the moving of the cars against each other. And then there is a type H that is also called a tight lock. That is a Janney coupler type that is often used then for passenger services. Again, a rigid coupling, and this tight lock version can also have fully automatic variants with connecting the pneumatic and electrical cables, and for automatic uncoupling. Again, not all the type H tight lock versions are fully automatic, but some of them are. I don't know if there is one in the game it is hard to actually see what kind of couplers they actually are, but this is actually a version. And the Buckeye is a Janney coupler variant that is often used in Great Britain then. And we will get to this. The specific of the Buckeye coupling is that it is side operated. We will come to that in the next slide, what it actually means if a coupler is side operated or top operated or bottom operated. And the Buckeye one is a variety or a version of the knuckle coupler, Janney coupler, that is side operated. Whereas in the SA3 universe, we had then in the 60s and 70s of the last century in Germany a coupler developed because the idea that we should replace our really old, our ancient buffers and chain couplers with an automatic coupler is not new. They have actually tried to accomplish this at least since the 60s, and the first thing that they came up with is the AK69E. That is also a UIC norm, I think, and that is the kind of coupler that the brake regulations refer to when it comes to can you run a train still in long loco formation, even though it is more heavy than 1600 tons, and then sometimes you can just see that they have this kind of coupler, and then you can still do it even if the cars do not require the minimum mass requirements. And why do we have two names for that? Unicoupler Intermat is because actually this coupler was more or less developed, or two versions of this coupler were developed in Western and Eastern Germany, and one is the Unicoupler and the other one is the Intermat coupler. And they are compatible, though, even though they were developed in Eastern and Western Germany at the time. Still, they are not really used a lot, and we don't have them in the game. And from what I was able to find out, they can actually couple automatically, at least some electricity, but they cannot uncouple automatically. Then next variant that was more or less developed in this line was the C-AKv, the Transpact, also a coupler that did not really made its way to being used in a wider way, but it is still, both of them are used for heavy ore trains in Germany, but apart from that they are not used a lot. Then the Z-AK was the last version more or less in this line of development, and this is an interesting coupler because it is an automatic coupler of that kind, but it does not have the central buffering, but you still need to have side buffers, so not all the forces can be dealt with on the central line. Yeah, if we ever get anything of that kind in the game, then I will show more about this. And just for making it more or less comprehensive, I did not want to go completely over this line of development. There is also a coupler that is compatible with the SA3 line, and at the same time with the screw-link coupling that is sometimes used in Finland, for example. Unilink it is called. And then obviously parallel to our ancient buffer and chain couplers on the freight trains, we have a lot of automatic couplers too. Scharfenberg coupler is probably the most prominent one, developed, if I am not mistaken, by a guy called Scharfenberg here in this little exclave between Poland, Lithuania and the sea that belongs to Russia, Königsberg, Kaliningrad area, and there the design of comes from originally, and it is not a propriety system. Kralowitz, says CD Radar. Yes, that is probably the Czech name for it, for this little piece of land. And I guess this guy Scharfenberg, he developed it there. And yeah, it is used in many different versions nowadays for automatic coupling of passenger trains, high-speed trains especially, but also some yeah, mass transit trains. And here's an example, and for you can recognize the Scharfenberg coupling by its circular cup shape versions, where with this one cylinder here sticking out of the one circular thingy, and this guidance horn that allows the couplers to find each other better, so that you don't need to align them so much. Delna coupling is a Swedish version of the Scharfenberg coupling that is proprietary is the word, I think, to this company Delna. It looks more or less exactly like a Scharfenberg coupling. The Japanese have a coupling that is called Shibata. There are different versions of it. It is similar to the Scharfenberg working principle, with especially the one with the rotating discs, but it looks significantly different, the Shibata, and as soon as we get the Japanese route in Train Sim World, I will come back to this and show those couplers. Then the thing that actually got us to talking about couplers is the Bergische Stahlindustrie, the BSI coupling, that was used, funny enough, in the Midland stream on the British Railways Class 158, and this is the one with this prismatic thing sticking out and on the other end going in again. Can also be a fully automatic coupler, the BSI one, and some British trains are still using it. Originally it was, as you can see, Stahlindustrie, steel industry, a thing for steel trains. In Switzerland they have a series of designs of their own. Georg Fischer is the original one. There are different versions for trams and normal ones that are, at least for some part, automatic, and this one is a fully automatic version. I have not found it in the game yet, but what I have found in the game is a coupling that is called a Schwab coupling, what is again a successor to this Georg Fischer company in Switzerland. And you can guess on what train you can find couplings of that. They are thatched in a way so that when coupling up, those two thingies scrape against each other and can scrape off ice and snow, for example, what is sometimes quite nice in Switzerland. Another automatic coupling, wedge lock. So you can see, don't confuse interlock, tight lock, wedge lock, all different thingies. Interlock and tight lock are knuckle couplers, whereas a wedge lock coupler is an automatic coupler that looks like this, very wide in its fully automatic version, and this is the coupler that is used by the London Underground trains, and for that also on the trains that are exported to the Isle of Wight. Automatic coupler that is found there a lot. So I have always taken pictures out of the game, not from somewhere else, so that they can show you that the game actually features those couplers a lot. In the next thing that I still have found is for the American area. Again, they have a coupler that is called a Tomlinson coupler, but this is typically one that is used in metro trains and mass transit trains. What they have on the BOD trains, the M3, also the M7 on Long Island Railroad and the Harlem line, is a coupler that is called the Wabtec N-type coupler. Again, different versions of this. It looks a bit like this. It is also called a spear type coupler because it has this spear actually sticking out that is going into this round funnel shaped thingy on the other side to make the connection. And if you read in operating rules about spear type couplers, then it is typically this kind of couplers that they are talking about. So this is just to, well, set the frame. You can see it's really a lot of things, and this is only very roughly a general matrix where all the couplers fit into. Most of the ones that are named here have several subtypes and variants, and the working principles are sometimes the same, sometimes they are quite different. And what is interesting for playing the game, for playing the simulator, is that sometimes the working principles ask for special care, especially if you have a coupler that needs to be aligned. Then you obviously need to stop and have someone align the couplers. If they are working in a way that you need some speed to make the connection, then you obviously cannot couple up with standing vehicles, but one vehicle needs to roll and the other one needs to be secured from being kicked away, and stuff like this. So from the working principle and what the couplers can do and not, we have obviously the requirements and the operating rules how to handle the stuff. So today I want to only look at the working principle of the classic Janney coupler, the AAR, American knuckle couplers, and maybe in streams to come we can talk about different couplers. So if there is any interest in a specific type of coupler, then just let me know in the comments and I will try to oblige. First of all, but just a little quiz: where are those couplers found in the game? I've already disclosed this one. The spear type coupler is on the M3, on the M7 trains, Long Island Railroad Harlem line, and trams, says CD Radar. And this wedge lock, this one is from the BR class 484 from the modern Isle of Wight. If you look at the 1972 Mark II stock, for example, you can sometimes find dummy version of that with without all the connectors for the electrical parts and the pneumatic parts. Typically those roundish things are the connectors for the pneumatic parts, and the long things that have those protective covers that open like a Dutch oven, from what I have read, is the electric connections typically. And yeah, this one is the RRBE 523 from Luzern-Sursee. This is the British Rail Class 158 from the Midland. And this is the ÖBB, you can see it here. Do not take again the ICE 3 or the TGV. This is the Talent one from the Vorarlberg route, but obviously there are many, many more. But now let's look at the working principle of a knuckle coupler, for example. I have tried to make an animation here in PowerPoint and reduce it to the most integral parts. You have a thing that looks a bit like the hand of some action figure or a Playmobil figurine or a Lego's figurine that can hold something. And the interesting part is that this hand has a pin here, that we're looking at it from above, top to bottom, and on this pin here sits the knuckle, and the knuckle is more or less an L-shaped thingy that can rotate around this knuckle here. This is why it's called the knuckle pin. And then there is a lock where this part of the knuckle can be locked. So this lock can be opened, then the knuckle thingy can pass, and it can be locked, then it cannot pass anymore. And to unlock it, we have typically some sort of a lever to release it. And this is the thing on the other car coming in. Here we can see the knuckle is already swapped to the inside, and it is held in place by the lock. So this one is locked, this one here is open, and if the car comes in, there is a point where this knuckle hits the other knuckle and it pushes inside until it gets held by the lock, and then it snaps fast. And then those two thingies are in place, and if the car is pulled again, then this knuckle obviously pulls against this side, and then the tractive force actually increases the force of the lock that holds the knuckle in place, and then all the tractive forces are carried by this contraption. And if you want to unlock it again, then you have to release the lock so that at least one of the knuckles can open again. What does this require us in the operating rules, this thing? But first, this releasing lock here can be top operated. That means we are pulling out this lock thingy, this pin of the lock from the top. You can, I think, see this on our train quite well, that there is this thing that is attacking from the top, and it is pulling it out. And this is according to regulations done at the locomotive. There you should have the knuckle couplers top operated. On the cars though, it is bottom operated. There it attacks from the bottom and it is pulling it out to the bottom. And there is this version where it is pulled out from the side operated, and then you will have typically a Buckeye coupler. So what do we need to do according to the operating rules when we're using knuckle couplers? And I've looked into the NORAC rules and the GCOR versions to get some general idea, because obviously what you have to do in particular is up to your local or your own railway carrier, obviously, and the operating rules tell you what to do. But typically, before coupling up to passenger cars or engines, you have to stop in a distance of about 50 feet to make sure that everything is safe and cozy, and then the couplers need to be aligned, and you always have to make sure that the couplers don't pass by each other, and this can cause harm. So the couplers actually might need to be aligned by hand. The catching area of the couplers is not so great. They don't have a guidance horn like the Scharfenberg couplers, for example. So some person needs to stand next to the coupler, get into the area between the couplers and the cars. So you need to be careful when doing this and provide some sort of a protection. At least one of the couplers needs to be open. Obviously, if both couplers are already locked, then those parts of the knuckles just press against each other and there is no coupling. And you can see this in the game sometimes. If your couplers are locked both and you try to couple up your cars, then they just crash into each other, but they don't couple. And in the beginning I wondered why this is, until I learned that at least one of the couplers needs to be unlocked before the coupling can happen. So in the game, when they are standing flush, you just operate the lever and then they just couple up again. But in real life, you don't want to do this, because this can obviously damage your couplers. And then the coupling process itself is automatic as long as you have some speed. And the rules in the NORAC say 4 miles per hour maximum, not faster when coupling up. And I think also the GCOR says that. Whereas if you have those spear type couplers, the Wabtec N-type couplers, you should not go faster than 2 miles per hour. But here we can be a bit faster doing our freight shunting and coupling. And yeah, obviously, since you are going in with speed, the cars sitting there need to be secured against running away. Sometimes it is just enough that the brake pipe is empty. Sometimes it might be necessary to fasten them with hand brakes so that they are not kicked away when you're trying to couple up instead of getting the coupling done. And then an interesting thing that we never do in the game, obviously, is that after coupling you have to make secure that everything is in place, that the lock is safe, and that there is enough traction force to activate the lock so that the lock and the knuckle actually connect properly. And for this you have to stretch your train, and especially the coupling that you just made, and to see that it actually works. And yeah, fasten this. Whereas as soon as you want to uncouple, typically you would have to press the couplers against each other so that they are super buff, because otherwise you might not be able to unlock the lock because there is too much force between the lock and the knuckle holding it in place, and for that you might be required to push with your locomotive into the couplers so that they can be released. Again, there can be more requirements, there can be less requirements, but this is the general outline that more or less comes from the way that those couplers work. And if you want to read it up, I found it in NORAC 11th edition. I know there is a 12th edition on the market now, but I have not been able to acquire a copy of the 12th edition. Here in Rule 100 you find some of this stuff, and the GZOR, here it is the 7th edition of 2015, the general one, and you can find it in those rules here, for example. Obviously you can find several similar rules in a lot of operating rules for your railway carrier in question. But this is actually something that we should do every time we couple and uncouple in the game, not just clicking the lever or the coupling and driving happily our way, but to make sure that the couplers are aligned, that one is open, not exceeding 4 miles per hour when going into the coupling, afterwards making sure that they lock. And for rounding this up, I have found a thingy from Wabtec company who builds a lot of those systems in real life. Doesn't really get better with my viewer here. This is a fact sheet that you can find on Wabtec's website, where they tell you what different kinds of couplers and elements of the couplers you can buy from them. And you can find here again type E, type E-F, type F, and different subtypes of this model. And they can tell you bottom operated, top and bottom operated, none and stuff again. And you can also see the knuckle itself, the pin that we've talked about, and there is a knuckle thrower if you want to unlock it that actually throws the knuckle out. And here's a lock lift assembly. This would be probably one that is operated from below where the lock is lifted, and here is the lock. Do they ship to EU? CD Radar asks. I guess they do, if you pay for it. What would the customs officials say about that? If you order a pair of couplers for your caravan, maybe, so that you can couple it up to your subway train. Yeah, that was that. The PDF out of the way and the presentation out of the way. Where is the presentation again? There it is. Now that would be something to order those. Yeah, I hope it wasn't so too boring or too confusing or too little concise. It's actually quite an interesting field. Of stuff. And here you can see that this coupler is open. You can see the knuckle. You can see the lock inside. You can see the knuckle pin here where it is turning this L-shaped thingy. You can see that this is top operated from the lever that we're using here. And if we are operating this lever, and it actually should pull this out. Can't see it here, but this is how it is supposed to work. Whereas on the cars, you can see that the releasing rod at the cars is attacking from below, so they are bottom operated in nettles. Alright. What did we do? We coupled up. What we have not done yet is to stretch the train to actually make sure that we have a proper coupling. For that, we just pull a bit, stretch the train and see, alright, everything worked. Hank can come in again. And we can finally make it. See, it's already getting day. Here is the border between night and day. Obviously. Or apparently. And we can go. Theodoro says freight train in my place used the coupler like that, but also added construction by steel chains. I see. So is the steel chains add-on then a second thing to make sure that everything works? A Notkupplung? Flat Earth confirmed. Yes. The CD radar. At least we gave the train enough time to release the brakes. It's lighter now, HE, isn't it? But I guess AJ is asleep. Probably for easier recovery, says Theodorus, if the main coupler broke. Don't need to wait for maintenance group and hold the main line, yeah. That would be what sometimes is called a Notkupplung. So that still the train does not get separated even if a coupler breaks. So I guess we are still limited to 15 here in the yard. Then maybe to 25. Yeah, well, Hank. No, we got Hank on the locomotive again. Whereas actually Hank should be sitting in the caboose. Do we actually have a caboose? Yes, we have a caboose. So we need even more people to run this train. So can we pass this here? Yeah, it does not hurt us. There was a red flag, but we were not required to stop at the red flag. Sometimes they are actually red signals, those red flags. Sometimes they are not. But I asked the signaler, because I suspected there being a red flag, as you might have seen. He allowed us to pass with restricted speed. He says, and that reminded me of the incident when the TGV was visiting us and they were pulling it with a Vectron, but there was some reduction, and along the way a pipe broke and the entire TGV flattened its wheels. Oh right, yeah, I remember that. I asked you whether they can actually couple up. Here again, this interesting setup. Red light is for the left track, the green light is for us. You can see that because of the dolly arm here. Why they did not put the dwarf signal on the dolly arm, I wonder. Hey, Chili. The nice thing... Oh, we are already in a 20 area. We can go a bit faster. Nice thing about having a caboose is that the person sitting there can actually tell us when the train is across the switch and we can go faster because it is radio equipped. You can radio us. Switch has cleared, and this is why we can go 25 now. Need to be a bit careful. $25. That was what was the limit before. Well, you see, this story fits the topic. Yes, it does. Yeah, I wondered at the time how they can actually run the TGV with a Vectron, but they had a car in between, right, to make the couplers compatible. Theorizes, but isn't that some kind of fail-safe protocol? I mean, if the coupler break and then the brake pipe gets stumped, so the whole train stop, because if we keep running with broken coupler, yes, it would pull, but when compressed it would be messy. Yeah, I guess if this was a setup that is supposed to be actually running on schedule, then this should not happen. But they were obviously bypassing some stuff. And I have my doubts that you can operate the air brake system on the TGV with the Vectron. Or at least not without anything in between. So again, the guy in the caboose can tell us when we have passed the sign with the 30. Like now. Sign has been passed, you can accelerate. What makes driving easy in Clinchfield is that most of the time when you're running from Kentucky to Virginia, you're driving uphill, and the other way around, you're almost always going downhill. No, I mean with the steel chains. The steel chains pull, but not really good at compression. Yeah. I guess this is just a thing that if the coupler breaks midway, that you don't lose the rest of your train. And at the next convenient stop, you would probably try to fix it and not run on with this chain connection then. But I guess it's always better to run on the chains as compared to having the train separated and half of the train sitting around on the open track until someone comes to pick it up. Another tipple that we are passing here. Ah, interesting question. If anyone can tell me what those thingies are here. These yellow cylinders labeled with 52 connected somehow to the rail. Are they connected with rail circuits? Are they hotbox detectors? Are they axle counters? Whatever they are, would be interesting to know. Pressure sensors? Maybe pressure sensors? To count axles, yes. Axle counter then, right? Maybe that's that. For a hotbox detector, it does not really look elaborate enough. So maybe best call is an axle counter. To know for the automatic signals that the train has left the area again. I'm just realizing that we have an immense lag between what I am doing at the moment and what I can see on the stream. It's almost like 10 seconds behind or something. You're going straight ahead. There is an area where you always get FPS performance issues, especially during sunrise as we have it now. And CD Radar says the coupler was not damaged, only the main pipe was led around by improvised pipes, and they could not handle the pressure of the air that the TGV needed to be pulled. Yeah. So the improvised thingies. Inspector says getting out of bed in the middle of the night to start an engineer shift at 4 AM. Not my type of work-life balance, yeah. The environment in this DLC kinda looks like the environment inside a Railroader game. I actually have not played this game, I guess. Well, the environment in some aspects, sometimes in some parts, this environment really looks great, and then you have parts where it is quite barren and you have floating trees and low quality foliage and stuff. And CD Radar says I get up at 4 tomorrow for a shift. Yeah, actually that is quite normal, and we are not really thinking so much about the fact that everyone who is doing a job like this needs to get up really early. And when starting the shift here, we probably started when we are actually sitting already in the train at 4 AM, and we probably started the shift much earlier. But it's going to be an interesting shift, so I'm looking forward to it. Very unusual. So tell us what is unusual about your shift tomorrow. Yes, it's funny to think that my job is to drive people to work, but who drives me to work? Well, your colleagues maybe. There actually was a level crossing. Sorry guys, the Spectre got to run again. Thank you for the stream, Tiger, and see you next week. Thank you for staying with me and us, Spectre. Have a great time. Tipple of a different kind here. CD Radar says a large part of the route is under reconstruction, so we have a special regime, and in addition, tomorrow I have to drive from another depot to our route because our depot is cut off from the route. I see. So you're actually going ways less traveled by. That sounds interesting. Oh. Probably not a level crossing. Anyway, nice thing we did the 14L. We should be back to normal on Thursday. They are replacing our wooden sleepers with concrete sleepers, installing a brand new switch for the new route that is under construction and some upgrades to the safety systems. I see. So maybe it will be a new feeling driving the regular route after that. But funny how you're not getting anywhere. It's still 9.3 miles to get there. I'm already looking forward to CPTC coming to us one day, as everyone is talking about. Just hope it works. The other day I wanted to start... I actually wanted to go to work and boarded one of the newish Siemens Desiro HC trains. And the train arrived at the station, opened the doors, I stepped in, sat down, and then the driver was on the PA. Due to technical problems, it will take like 3 minutes to proceed. And then, after half an hour, I left the train and went home again, because they were not able to solve their problems, and the train was stranded for at least half an hour at the station. So the new stuff does not always work as intended. And then apparently the procedure that the driver has to go through includes like shutting down the train, setting it up again. So there was a phase when the doors could not be opened, and that unfortunately was just the time when the S-Bahn train that I could have taken alternatively as an alternative arrived and left again while we were locked in the Regional Express. Sorry, hello. Ooh, he says Sunday choo-choo, yes. Choo-choo-choo for Sunday night. Instead of soccer. At least some driving from Kentucky to Virginia. And CD Radio says, oh yes, it's always difficult to figure out what to say to those people when I don't know how long it will take to resolve the situation. Yes. Well, it was a bit funny because the sequence was first, he said on the PA, it will take about 3 minutes. Then he said, well, for dealing with the problem, I need to close the door and they cannot be opened for a while. And then the next thing was the automatic announcement that we will arrive at the next station in a few minutes, while we were still stationary at the station before. Caboose is still here. That is good. Yeah, you can sometimes find those clips on the internet where someone recorded what the train drivers announced. Yeah, CD Racers, didn't you say it would be a shorter stream? It actually will be a shorter stream because at some point I will just call it a day. And as always, I just thought I had a presentation material for like 10 minutes. But when I start talking about things, it always takes much more time. Sari says, what does train crew do to pass time during transit? Like here on my train. They actually have to, depends, the brakeman next to me has to check every signal that we are passing, tell me if I'm not slowing down fast enough. If we get a restricting signal, sometimes we have to shout to each other the aspect that the signal is showing. The guy in the caboose has to tell us as soon as we have passed signals, switches, and occasionally tell us that he's still there. But most of the time they are just fighting to stay awake. Here, for example, is a part that is extremely barren because there is, for some reason, no grass. Almost looks as if it has been forgotten. CD Ray says another weekend away and the school children's summer holidays are starting here. Does that mean more or less work for you? Oh no, now I went into speeding. So where are we on our trip, by the way? We're almost halfway through. Well, I think we actually did what we came to do, and since I cannot go through the whole McClure sequence anyway, I might probably call it a day soonish. Because until we get there so that we can do some more shunting and coupling procedures, it might actually take half an hour or what. So it was supposed to be a shortish stream anyway. Maybe I should have started with one of the services in between that are rated with like 7 minutes or something. But anyway, you all know how it looks like coupling cars and locomotives. But this is actually not uninteresting what you do here with those cutting the train into two cuts of cars. Sometimes you get your locomotive in the middle, and if you not only follow the instructions but also try to understand what you're doing there, that's quite nice. So I like those longish sequences here. On the one hand, fewer people travels as CD radar, but on the other hand, colleagues have holidays and someone, me, has to replace them. Yeah, I can see that. So you can roleplay coupler uncouple while driving. Well, I can just drop the cars that we have, right? Uncouple them while driving. But we probably don't want to do that. Now we're driving uphill quite steep. Yeah, well, I think I will make one more coupler stream about the Scharfenberg coupler, because that is a quite interesting technology, how this works in comparison to the knuckle coupler that we have seen here today. If you are interested in any specific type of coupler next to that, then let me know, then I will look into it and see what I can find out about this type. And now, since we are now running into an area that is very hard on the performance, probably because we have the rising sun just behind us and in our window and everything, and this is calling for a lot of shadow work being done. This is working havoc on the FPS. Here the sun is rising and went once through our cap. Well, then let's call it a day here. Let's watch some soccer maybe, or go for an early night. I hope you enjoyed a bit my stream about the Janney couplers, the American couplers. Have a nice and vaya con Dios CD radar in a quite ecclesiastical undertone for now. Thank you for bearing with me, Theodoros CD radar. See you later. Zareth, have a good time. AJ, you are already asleep, I am sure. And yeah, take care.